Yollardayım babam gerçekten şimdi kardeş ekmek peşinde vay vay ekmekçi peşinde.
Today is the 1st of July. Across Hong Kong, flags are raised, ceremonies are held, and the city marks the anniversary of the handover. On this very day in 1997, the rain poured down over Victoria Harbour as the British Union Jack was lowered for the last time, and the Chinese five-star flag was raised. It was the end of an empire, the end of 156 years of British colonial rule, and the beginning of a brand new chapter. But to truly understand the Hong Kong of today, its unique identity, its architecture, and its complex relationship with its past, you have to step away from the modern, glittering skyscrapers of Central. You have to walk up the steep slopes of Wyndham Street, past the trendy bars, and stand before a massive, imposing complex of red brick and granite. This is Kwun, but for over a century and a half, local residents knew this place by a much more intimidating name. This was the heart of colonial law and order. A single interconnected block where a person could be arrested, tried, and imprisoned without ever leaving the compound. At the absolute center of this dark history lies Victoria Prison, the very first penal institution built by the British in Hong Kong. The triad of colonial justice to understand Victoria Prison, we first have to look at the two massive institutions that sit right next to it. The British colonial government designed this compound to be a self-contained machine of justice. It was divided into three distinct units operating side by side. First, there was the Central Police Station. Established in 1864, this was the headquarters of law enforcement. It is a stunning example of late Victorian architecture, with grand columns and a wide parade ground where officers drilled under the tropical sun. If you committed a crime in colonial Hong Kong, this is where you were brought first. Directly adjacent to the police station sits the Central Magistracy. Built in 1914, this Greek revival building with its massive ionic columns exuded the absolute unquestionable authority of the law. Here in the quiet wood-paneled courtrooms, magistrates handed down sentences to thousands of defendants. And once the gavel fell, and the sentence was read, the prisoner didn't need to be loaded into a transport van. They were simply led down a secure covered passage, straight into the third unit of the compound, Victoria Prison. Inside Victoria Prison built. In 1841, literally the same year the British first claimed Hong Kong Island, Victoria Prison is one of the oldest surviving colonial structures in the territory. Step inside, and the grand, public-facing architecture of the police station and magistracy disappears. It is replaced by the grim, functional reality of Victorian penal theory. The walls are thick, made of heavy granite blocks and dark red brick. The windows are tiny, barred slits designed to let in a minimum of light and air. One of the most famous parts of the prison is D Hall. It was built using a radial design, a panopticon concept. The cells branch out like the spokes of a wheel from a central guard tower, allowing a very small number of wardens to keep a constant, watchful eye on every single corridor. For the inmates, life here was brutal, especially in the 19th and early 20th centuries. The prison was perpetually overcrowded. Cells designed for a single inmate often held 3 or 4. The heat in the Hong Kong summer was suffocating. Disease spread quickly, and the daily regime consisted of hard labor, silence, and isolation. The revolutionary in Cell 14, over its 165 years of active operation, Victoria Prison held pirates, triad members, wartime spies, and political dissidents. But its most famous inmate was a man who would go on to change the course of world history. In June 1931, British authorities in Hong Kong arrested a Vietnamese communist organizer named Nguyen Ai Quoc. He was locked away inside Victoria Prison, suspected of plotting against the French colonial government in Indochina. For over a year, he languished in these cold cells, fighting both tuberculosis and the threat of extradition, which would have meant certain death at the hands of the French. Thanks to the efforts of a British lawyer who argued his case all the way to the Privy Council in London, he was eventually released. Years later, that same prisoner would return to Vietnam, change his name, and lead his country to independence. The world would come to know him as Ho Chi Minh. From dungeon to culture hubas, the decades rolled on, Victoria Prison adapted. During World War II, it was occupied by the Japanese military. In the post-war era, it became a transit center for illegal immigrants and refugees fleeing turmoil in mainland China. But by 2006, the prison was obsolete. It was decommissioned, its heavy iron gates locked for what many assumed was the last time. However, instead of demolishing this symbol of colonial oppression, Hong Kong did something remarkable. In partnership with the Hong Kong Jockey Club, the government undertook one of the most ambitious heritage conservation projects in Asia. In 2018, the gates reopened as Kwun today. You can walk through the very same yards where prisoners once exercised. You can step inside the preserved cells of D Hall, where interactive projections bring the stories of the inmates to life. The old police parade ground is now a vibrant public square, and the historic buildings stand alongside stunning, modern art galleries. On this July 1st, as Hong Kong reflects on its history, Kwun stands as a physical reminder of where this city has been. It is a place where the heavy, dark iron of a colonial prison has been unlocked, transformed into a space for creativity, history, and community.